What's up, everybody? It's Charles. Today, taking your questions on pulling dashes, water pumps, header replacement, and more. This is episode 254 of the Humble Mechanic podcast. All right, if you guys want to get a question on a show like this, the way to do that is to email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in that subject. Ask your question. Give me some space. Give me the details so I know your question while I'm reading the details, because that makes it way easier to help you out. Also, remember, if you want to listen only to these and many other videos I have, they're available in audio-only format on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, and of course, as always, at HumbleMechanic.com. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. And to round out our pre-Q&A show, want to remind you guys, if you like the show, want to throw some support, check out that crew membership program. Great way to help the show. More importantly, though, you get discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Sonic Tools, Scanner Danner, Kermit TDI, Prime Shades, USP Motorsports, Adams Polishes, and a whole bunch more. And because last week was my birthday, I impromptu am going to run a sale for 1 full week after this video comes out. That'll be ending on February 18th of 2019. We'll do a $25 discount per year. Use the code BIRTHDAY19 when you join up, and that'll give you your discount. I'll drop it down in the description so you don't need to worry about it. As always, links to that and everything else we're going to talk about today will be down in the description. All right, that's wrapped up. Let's hit these questions. First one up is from Nils. I would like to put a down pipe from a Mark IV R32 or an Audi TT into my GTI VR6. Looks like it should go fine, except I will need to put a second O2 sensor on the new pipe. How would I go about converting a single downstream O2 to a double downstream O2 sensor? Thanks very much. Okay, good question. Let's talk about that. So we want to take a header out of an R32 or a TT and put it in our GTI. Cool, all about that. Couple of concerns that I would have right away. One, is this really going to be the performance that you want, right? Let's think about why we're making this modification. Maybe our header's broken at a weld or something like that, and we want to upgrade. Or are we looking for purely what might be a performance upgrade? In most of the research that I've done, modifying the header on an R32 or a GTI, anything with a VR6 really, isn't really the best use of money, because you're gonna, unless you have this header, which it doesn't sound like you do since you're talking R32 or TT, you're gonna have to buy it, which probably means you're gonna spend a fortune, because I don't think the header upgrade is something a lot of R32 guys are doing. I could be wrong. I don't see in the must-do modifications for these cars, headers ever being one that someone truly recommends. I don't want to discourage you from doing it. If you want to do it, rock on, man, let's do it. Here's a couple of things I foresee possibly being an issue. I, in fact, just paused it and went out and looked at my R32. It has 4 oxygen sensors, 2 right in the header, right near the engine, and 2 downstream. So our upstreams are close to the engine, pre-catalytic converter. Our downstreams are post-catalytic converter. Also, if I remember right, on the non-all-wheel drive GTIs, which are all GTIs, on the VR6s that are not all-wheel drive, the header and catalytic converter are one piece, whereas on the R32, the header and the catalytic converters are 2 separate pieces. So you might run into some spatial issues there, and you're probably going to have to not only do the header, but you're going to have to do the catalytic converter pipes as well, and then that'll go back into the exhaust. So I'd really look, do you want to spend this kind of money on doing the header and cats, or is it better to get maybe a high flow cat for your car, something to open it up a little bit, or a performance header on your car rather than messing around trying to convert the oxygen sensors and all that stuff? That's something I really want you to consider, but I do not want to discourage you from doing this, because cool stuff happens when you do things that other people don't do. What I would say, though, is if you're going to do this, I wouldn't mess around with trying to convert 2 oxygen sensors to 1 oxygen sensor, whether that's upstream or downstream. I wouldn't do any of that. I would simply take my upstream O2, I'd put it in one of the 2 holes, take my downstream O2, put it in one of the other downstream holes behind the cat, and I would block off the other 2 plugs. This might not give you the best monitoring. This might also cause you to run into some catalyst efficiency codes, because it doesn't see as much volume coming through, it may actually be fine. I really don't know. But I think that is going to be my first step before I start cutting and splicing my factory harness and probably tweaking out any kind of reading. Now you could go way in, you could add pins and all that stuff and have your software tuned to maybe accept that, but I think by the time you have invested all that money, all that energy into doing what you're asking me, you would have been better off buying a full exhaust for the vehicle that bolts in from somewhere like 42 Draft Design or something like that, and enjoying the car. Now, if this is a challenge you want, I would do it all on paper. I would write down all the costs, throw it in a spreadsheet or see something like that. You may find out that doing this is going to end up costing you like $2,000, and you're not going to really have anything better than you did other than saying, hey, it's got an R32 header on it, which is cool. I just don't think it's going to really be worth the money and time and energy unless that is what you want. And dude, if that's what you want, rock on with it. My gut says, though, you're going to run into more issues than you really expect, and you're not going to really get much out of it other than really an awesome learning experience, because what a cool learning experience. Even if you don't do this, this may be a good mental exercise to see really what it would cost, truly, like to the penny, and time-wise and wiring-wise, to make this happen. But overall, it seems like that's a lot more work than I would want to do, because you'd really not get a huge return on that. Plus, you're buying high-flow cats. You're replacing a lot more, I think, than you might actually be planning to by the time you get it all done. If anybody's done this out there and wants to prove me wrong, as we know everyone likes to prove me wrong, drop your comments down below, and maybe somebody else has a much different experience of actually trying to do this, and can speak to the true gains that come out of doing this swap. All right, next one up is from Isaiah. I was wondering if you had any tips on pulling a dash on a Mark IV Jetta. Just picked up an 04 Jetta GLI. Side note, the 04 GLI is my favorite GLI. Got the phone coming out, want to replace the heater core, of course, all the normal things. Someone used the wrong type of coolant, so it's probably clogged up. I'm a VW technician at a dealership in Dallas that just opened in November. It's my first professional experience with VW, and I'm loving it. Awesome. Any tricks or tips? Thanks, Isaiah. All right, Isaiah, this is your personal car, which generally makes this easier and also makes you way less motivated to do it because you've spent all day working on cars. Now you got to do something like pulling the dash out on your own car. So my tips for pulling the dash are as follows. 1, masking tape is your friend. Any place you can see where you might cause damage to a trim panel by prying on it or installing it or removing it, tape it up. It's going to be worth the time and effort and energy. Next, understand that your car, this was 14, 15, 16 years old at this point, you're probably going to find some broken parts or break some plastic parts. I don't want to say unavoidable because you can avoid it, but it's very, very common that these pieces get brittle, especially if the car's been in Texas its whole life. Those heat cycles really do a lot of damage to that plastic. You can see on my R32 videos where there's so much plastic that doesn't quite fit right or is just flat out broken. Now there's a couple of different ways to approach this. You're going to be pulling the center console out. I would start there. And then what I would do is I'd leave the seats in, and I would take a magnetic tray and set it on the driver's side. I would take a magnetic tray, I would set it in the center, and I would take a magnetic tray and I would set it on the passenger side. And as I'm taking parts off, or bolts off, I should say, I'm dropping them in the trays, whether it's magnetic, whether it's an egg crate, whether it's plastic bags, and I'm keeping them, the screws on the driver's side, and the ones on the passenger side on the passenger side. It's gonna help out quite a bit. You can also get some cardboard and poke the screws through and label them if you really wanna go crazy with that. Luckily, most of those screws are all the same. In fact, I'm thinking like there's only about 4 different style of fasteners. There's T25s, T20s, there's some 10 millimeters and 13 millimeters. Maybe some other couple of oddball ones too, but that's primarily what you're gonna find. So keep them separate left and right. Or as you take a component out, if it has screws with it, throw it in a bag and tape that bag to the back of the component so the screws are right with the component. It's also a good idea to take pictures of wiring and things like that so you can see the routing of it before you were in there. So if you're not sure, for example, does the harness go over the crossbar, or does it go under the crossbar at this point? Take some pictures as you go. That'll help you out a ton. Honestly, the Mark IV dash and the Mark IV heater box is a pretty straightforward, easy job. I think it only pays R&R under warranty, 4 hours, 3.5 hours or something like that. It's not much, so you should be able to get this done pretty quickly. What I would also recommend is that you maybe go to the junkyard and get a second box. And the reason I'm saying getting a second box is you can get those super duper cheap. You're refoaming it anyway. You're putting a new heater core and a new evaporator in it anyway. Do all the work on the one you get from the junkyard, clean it up and make sure all the doors move and things like that. Get it all done, and then when you take the heater core out, you can just hot swap the boxes, right? And then you got a new one ready to go, just drop it right in. There's a couple of reasons. One, this is going to eliminate downtime. Two, it's going to keep you motivated because you know, okay, I got this box ready to go. As soon as this one's out, I drop the new one in and I just keep going. The biggest thing though is it's going to keep all those things that you removed fresh in your mind. If you wait and do the box once you get it out, now you're talking maybe 3 days, 4 days by the time you work and come home before that box is ready to go back in. And as we know, the longer time we wait to do a repair, like put it back together, the more likely we are to forget where something went. So if you can, if it's in your time budget and dollar budget, get another box, hot swap it. That way you don't have to have everything torn apart for a long time. You can just get it done right away. Also, clean that new box out. This is a great opportunity to clean under the carpet and get all that trim and everything nice and freshed up. As you're taking things apart, if you're concerned about plugging things back in the right way, maybe take some masking tape and label it. You know, driver's side seat warmer connector, tape, put the tape on, or label makers are great for that too, whatever works for you. But honestly, man, it's a pretty straightforward job. Sometimes I would take the seats out. Other times I would leave them in. Leaving the seats in does give you a place to sit. You can also sit on the floor, kneel. Just if you're going to kneel and take the seats out, put something over that bracket that the seat bolts to. Otherwise, I guarantee you, you will hurt your knee at some point, or you'll lay on it and hurt your back or head if you don't take them out. So it's a pretty straightforward job, man. Just it's nothing but nuts and bolts. You got access to the repair manual if you need that assistance. Don't forget to drain the coolant out of it, or at least out of the heater core, and evac the AC system, because you will need to do that in order to remove the evaporator. And maybe good time to reseal that pollen filter housing as well, because, well, those tend to leak. So easy enough, good luck. And hey guys, there is a HumbleMechanic Facebook group. It's called the HumbleMechanic Club. I'll try and drop a link down below. For stuff like this, if you want to post pictures of what you're doing, swing over there and post it there. There's about 20,000 members over there. Ton of people that are a lot of help for situations like this. And it's cool to show off what we're doing to a group of like-minded people, and there's some really great folks over there. So check that out as well. And again, post some pictures up there because I'd love to see the progress of this one. And I want to see the GLI. I love those 04 GLIs. All right, next one up is from Greg. I have a 2010 EOS 2-liter turbo with a CBFA engine code. Had to put a water pump on the car back in March. Unfortunately, has already failed. The pump was OEM from Shop DAP. The unusual twist is the inner wall, as you guys can see here if you're watching the video, was broken out, not the outer wall. I heard about GAF providing an aluminum water pump housing I want to go with. Unfortunately, the aluminum body only fits a CCTA and some other codes, not the CBFA. Just wondering if you knew the differences and if the GAF water pumps can be adapted to the CBFA. Tired of messing with plastic pump housings. Greg, you are not the only one, which is why that metal housing exists. So, as the aftermarket often does, it has solved a problem that exists, which is these water pumps on the 2 liters leaking. I'm going to talk about your water pump in a second, Craig, but what I want to make sure that when you're installing these pumps, we're not neglecting something else. Typically, the reason these leak multiple times, not all the time, but most of the time, is 2 reasons. One, improper installation. So the water pump wasn't torqued properly, the seal wasn't set properly, it wasn't on the alignment dowels all the way when it was installed. Most of the time, it's just somebody went brr, 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 and ran it in and didn't use the proper torque number, aka I think it's 9 Newton meters, and the torque sequence, which I forget off the top of my head, but of course that's in the repair manual, which you should be using if you're doing a job like this. The other reason we see multiple failures of these pumps is we're not addressing the reason that the pump is failing. Yes, it's plastic. Yes, that sucks, but that is what it is. We need to look slightly above that water pump and make sure that we don't have oil leaking from the cam bridge. That causes so many multiple water pumps to have to be replaced because it's leaking coolant, so we fix the coolant leak. It's leaking coolant, so we fix the coolant leak. never addressing the actual reason why the coolant leak is happening, and that's because the pump is getting saturated with oil, or the seal's getting saturated with oil, or, again, we didn't install it the right way. We didn't clean that gasket surface and things like that. I'm not saying any of those are your doing or what has happened to yours, Greg, but that is something I see a lot of. So yes, the CBFA and the CCTA pumps are different. The CBFA has an extra sensor in it. The neck for the outlet of the thermostat is a little bit different. The main part and the pump part are pretty much the same. There might be some slight differences if you actually broke out a measuring device, but for the most part, they're pretty much the same. If you were to be able to adapt this, you'd have to disassemble the plastic one and then swap that one piece at the bottom, the outlet of the thermostat. And that may work. I've never tried to do it. It may not. I'm not sure the exact serviceability of that plastic pump. And, the CBFA engine code is such a low number compared to the CCTA that I think that's why we're not seeing more of the metal housing CBFA pumps. I did a search and I couldn't find one either. If any of you guys know of a water pump that will definitely fit the CBFA, drop a link down in the comments and let us know. I couldn't find one. I looked on ShopDAP. I looked on some of the other websites that sell VW parts as well, and I could not find it. Now, that's as of today, the time this video comes out. 3 months from now, Greg, we may have a solution for that, and if I find one, I'll try and let you guys know as soon as I can. But right now, it looks like you're probably going to be stuck with that plastic, or composite, we should really say, that composite water pump housing. Before you do anything, though, as far as replacing it, let's go and make sure that everything else on that engine is right. Because if you're leaking oil out of that cam bridge or the PCV or something like that, that can create the need to put multiple water pumps on. I've heard of failing balance shafts causing water pumps leaks too, but I think that's so much more rare than just flat out there's some sort of other reason, right? Oil leak, improper installation, a crappy pump. That happens. Maybe it was just a crappy pump that you got. The OEM ones are pretty good and whatnot, but hopefully anyway, we have a solution for that soon. It did take a while for those metal water pumps to come out for that car. I mean, that engine came out in 08, and I think it was within the last year or so, maybe year and a half, that we started to see those metal impeller or the metal housing pumps. So it may take a little while before we see a metal pump, but we'll cross our fingers and hope that we do. If any of you guys know of the metal CBFA, that's the key. It's not the standard CCTA. This is a different engine code with a few different things on it. CBFA engine code that fits. Drop a link and let us know. All right, last one of the day comes from James. How does the Mark III VR6 fuel pump locate in the bottom of the tank? Hey Charles, I'm currently restoring a 1992 Mark I Caddy pickup truck. Awesome. One of the modifications is a AAA VR6 from a 93 Golf VR6. Cool. Another mod affecting my question is 4-link rear air suspension I have installed. This has resulted in me fabbing up my own fuel tank. This is currently in design stage, and one of the contributing factors is the fuel pump. I'm presuming there is a lock assembly as the lower half of the pump is rotated into the bottom of the tank. Watch a fuel pump removal install and hack videos to gain some insights, but wasn't clear what it was that locks into the bottom of the tank and which part of the plastic body of the fuel pump it locates on. I'm looking to fabricate the same locking mechanism in a custom tank or scrap the idea and install something like an Aeromotive Phantom Stealth 200 pump. Looking forward to your insight. Thanks, James. James, so yes, it does sit in and then lock. You twist it and it locks into place. So I think there's 3 tabs that it lines on, and then when you twist the pump, that's what locks and locates the pump housing into the tank. If I were doing this, I probably wouldn't go that route. I would probably look at doing something else. What we want to make sure we account for, James, and it sounds like you're a sharp dude, so you probably already know all this, is we want to make sure we take into account for the vehicle moving side to side, going uphill, going downhill. If we're going downhill and our pump is at the back and we don't have something to keep fuel around it, when we go down the hill, all the fuel goes to the front and we can starve out the pump. We can actually damage the pump, overheat the pump. That's why on the Mark III and most other VWs anyway, there's a bowl that the fuel pump sits in. So that bowl is almost always going to have fuel in it. And that bowl usually is where the return fuel comes in, at least on the Mark III anyway. The return fuel comes into that bowl. I might look at a couple of things. I might look at a Mark IV pump rather than a Mark III pump, because the Mark IV pump doesn't sit and locate into the tank. it just drops into the tank. It's actually spring-loaded and drops down into the tank. That way you don't have to worry about anything at the bottom of the tank other than making sure that you have a tank sized properly to fit. When I did my Mark 1 swap, I used the factory fuel setup. So it had the external pump and the pump inside of the tank. I think I replaced that pump inside the tank with an upgraded pump. I can't remember, it's been so long ago. If I didn't, it was just a replacement factory unit. That delivered plenty of fuel, and I don't recall that having to locate or anything in the tank. I think it just was held in. So you may want to look at the way the Mark 1 pump installs and then just retrofit a higher flow pump if you feel like you need it. That way you can eliminate that external pump that the Mark 1s had. Going with the Aeromotive 200 pump setup, another really great option. It kind of depends. You want to keep this somewhat factory, or do you want to have it something, I'm assuming the serviceability of components on that other system is probably better than on the factory one. But the Mark IV pump and housing and everything is nice because it's all one unit. It's got a level sender on it. You're already basically wired for it. You may have to repin a connector so that you're not going from like a square connector to a round connector, but that's pretty straightforward. And if you're fabbing up your own tank, guessing repinning 4 wires on a connector is probably not that big of a deal for you. So there's a ton of options. Again, I'd focus on the Mark IV pump at this point, or an aftermarket setup, rather than trying to rig up a contraption that fits perfectly in the bottom of your tank. If you really want to do that Mark III setup, which is cool, again, like that first question, if that's what you want to do, I think that's cool. I would go to the junkyard. I would buy one of the pumps from the junkyard. Who cares if it works? You're just using it for a mock-up. And I might even consider cutting that section out of the fuel tank, right? It's kind of ghetto, but cutting that section out of the fuel tank and taking that to, that way you have a template in order to make it happen. You could probably make this happen just with that pump housing. And again, who cares if it works? It's worth, the $10 or $20, whatever a fuel pump costs at the local junkyard. That way you have it, you can mock it up, you can test fit it, you can make sure everything's good. I don't think I would go that route, but I would look more in the Mark IV, the aftermarket setup. You're kind of throwing OEM a bit out the window anyway, going with the Mark 1 swap with the VR6 and the air ride suspension, which I think is all awesome. I love, man, I really still, one of these days I'm going to get a really cool caddy truck. Mine was a cabriolet, so not quite as cool, but still, it was a fun car to get. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Questions or comments, drop them down below, or if you're listening, swing over to episode 254 on the blog. Hopefully you're already subscribed. If not, hit that subscribe button and make sure you get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Snapchat. By the way, the GTI is running again. The White Wookiee lives, so we'll have some more videos coming from that soon. Guys, thank you so much for watching, or thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again next time.